Hey everybody, we're diving into a Lightroom tutorial here of an image I took last week while out on the trail. I used my little Canon SL3 with a 24mm pancake lens. I usually use that camera for video, but my full frame camera's in the shop. So I took this little guy out, show you what it's capable of, show you that cameras don't matter a whole lot. It's really what you can do with it as the artist. Like this little guy. This camera with the 40mm pancake and the 24mm pancake in a backpack weigh less than 2 pounds. And they're prime lenses, keep things really sharp, do really great work. So this photo I took it on the 24mm at f8 with an ISO of 100. When I focused on the image, I focused back to the tree line just before the mountains at the top of the tree line. Had some good contrast there to focus on, and I was really hoping for some more dramatic lighting for the sun to come peeking through the clouds and give some nice shadows over the mountain, but that didn't really happen. So working with what we had, decided to go with a black and white image. I like a hard contrast black and white image, and it was hard light, so figured that should work pretty well together. I'm pretty happy with how it came out. Let's dive into it and make this image pop, show you my process and what the final image looks like. If you haven't checked out last week's video, go ahead and go back and check that out. It'll walk you through how I got here. All right, everybody, I got this image I took last week. This is the original image. It's a little dark because I shot it for the highlights. If you look here, I got it as bright as I could in the histogram without clipping on the right side. You can see that on the back of your camera usually as well. And I want this to be a black and white image, so we're going to make that switch right off the back. We're going to use our main adjustment sliders just to properly expose our image. First thing I like to do is bring the shadows up. You can see we're able to bring back all those detail in the shadows. I'll bring the highlights back down, which is going to help the detail in the clouds stand out. Since it's a black and white, I kind of like to go high contrast. Bring my exposure up some. About right there. Now I'm going to bring my whites up while watching the histogram. Slide it to the right as far as I can without clipping. And it looks like my blacks are already in a good place, so I'll leave them there. And from here I'm going to come down and we're going to do a little mixing on the black and white sliders. This is really just artistic touch. Just kind of play with them and see what you like. I want the sky to be nice and dark, so I'm going to bring those blues way down. I don't think we really have any magenta. Leave that one alone. And this looks like a good starting point to head in to some dodging and burning. I'm going to start with my brush. And we're going to work here in the clouds. I'm just going to paint them in. And this brush does a really good job of selecting similar pixels so it won't bleed over into the sky too much if you're just kind of quick with it. And I'm drop down the highlights in the clouds some more. Bring the whites up a hair, bring the blacks down quite a bit. But what really helps is I'll take my texture slider, my clarity slider to the right, and that really helps those details pop. The last thing I'll do is kind of take the contrast and see how far I can go with it. And I can go almost all the way without clipping any of the highlights or crushing any of the blacks, and we brought back a lot of detail in those clouds. For a black and white image like this, that looks really nice. Alright, now we're going to focus on the mountain peak, And you can come over here and choose a new brush, but it doesn't reset any of your sliders. And with this cloud version of Lightroom, they want you to go back and reset each one by one. But I found a workaround. If you come over here and turn the brush off and back on, all your sliders are reset to 0. So now we're going to paint in here the mountain peaks. And I want to bring some texture into there, maybe some clarity, help them pop a little bit. A little bit of contrast. And now we're going to do a little more localized dodging and burning. I'm going to turn the brush off and on again, scroll down my mouse wheel to get a smaller brush. Bring my contrast up some, and I'm just going to paint in here where I'd like to lighten up the image. Areas that are already light, bring them up just a little more, kind of make the image pop. Don't want to go too much. And then choose another brush and do just the opposite. We're going to darken some of the dark areas. Might be able to take them down a little more, something about like that. That is looking pretty good. Continuing top to bottom, we'll grab another brush now and we'll focus on these trees kind of in the background. And I want to make them brighter, but I want to do something a little different. By going negative on the dehaze, we'll add a little haze and brighten them up. It kind of gives it just a little dreamy, almost fog effect. And then I can come up and take them a little brighter with the exposure. Something about like that. This area right here to me looks a little too bright, so I'm going to shrink my brush. Come over here and grab the eraser. This area over here looked a little too bright, so I grabbed the eraser, brought that down some. The eraser tool right here. And that area is looking pretty good. I want to grab another brush, make it a little bigger. We're going to highlight some of these trees. Some of the ones are already a little brighter than the others. Just make them pop out a little more. As I'm doing that, they're a little too sharp to me now. The detail's a little much. Kind of draws your eye in towards them and they're not a focal point. So I'm going to come down here and take the texture down. And there, that actually helped quite a bit. Continuing top to bottom, I want to highlight a few of these brushes now. And I'm going to use the radial filter for that. Take my exposure up a little bit and just draw out some radial filters. It's pretty quick. I like to keep my feather over here at 100. That just helps the light look a little more natural. And there we go. That is looking pretty good. I'm going to turn it off and then just grab a new one so my sliders are reset. And I'm going to throw a radial filter right here on this pond. Bring the exposure up some on it. We'll take the contrast up a little as well. We're trying to really just make the water pop. I want to take the texture down though, give it kind of a little bit of a smoother, glassier, dreamier look. And I think we might be done with our dodging and burning. That's looking pretty good to me. I'm going to come back up here to my main sliders. Something I like to do on all my images is split toning. I like to really crank this up and then slide it across to find a color that catches my eye. Like that there. And then dial it down a little bit till it's a little more natural. That was the shadows. I'll do the same thing with the highlights. And I'm just looking for something I like in the image. Kind of like that effect right there. Dial it back down a little. And then I'll play with the balance between the two. Like it a little bit on the warmer side, a little kind of sepia tone there. Might bring the blues up in the shadows just a hair more. Bring the reds down just a hair. We can turn it off and on. It's a real subtle effect, but I like it. Last but not least, I want to throw on a little vignette. Around -12 looks good. And I want to take it a little step further. I'm going to grab another radial filter. A big one. Drag it across the middle of the picture. Come up here and just slide the exposure up. Just a little bit. Make the center of the image pop out a little more. And there we go. That's my black and white version. We can compare it here to our original. And yeah, I really like the way that came out. I hope you guys too and found this tutorial helpful. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button, turn on notifications, give this video a thumbs up. Make sure to check out last week's video where I actually went on the adventure to get this picture. All right, have a good one.